Okay, our next speaker is Laura Fisher. She's going to be talking about keeping things in balance, classic visual ratios.
Do this way. I'm Laura Mitten, and there was a guy named Leonardo of Pisa, who we know more as Fibonacci, and he wrote about mathematics in the 13th century. And one of the things he wrote about was a sequence of numbers that we now know by his name. And it's a sequence that you create by adding the previous two numbers to themselves to get the next one. So 1 plus 2 is 3, and 2 plus 3 is 5, and 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on, and so on, and so on. And there's some interesting things you can do with these numbers. One of them is if you take squares and you make the squares to be the size of the Fibonacci numbers, you can set them up in a rectangle like this, and it's a very special rectangle called the golden rectangle. And one of the cool things about it is that you can take a square away and you retain the rectangle. Another thing you can do with it is you can draw a curve in it. It's called a Fibonacci spiral. And this Fibonacci spiral is something that occurs in nature all over the place. We see it in seed formations of flowers. You see it in nautilus shells. You see it in pine cones. You see it in the shape and size of insect wings. It's all over the place. It's in musical harmonies and all kinds of growth patterns, like this bizarre Romanesco cabbage thing, but that's actually food. So, and there are different things. There are different ways that you can express the Fibonacci series, because you can. One way is as a ratio. And it's A plus B is to A as A is to B. And another way to say that is that the smaller piece is to the larger piece as the larger piece is to the total. In any case, it's a ratio. And it's been used for centuries and centuries and centuries. It's been something that human beings have thought of as powerful and as beautiful. And so it's not just these guys in Italy in the 13th century. It goes way back to Celtic stuff. And you can see that same ratio there. It's BAB across the top there to see that ratio. Now, what you can do with this if you're designing stuff now in today's world is to use that same ratio. It's very pleasant, it's very harmonious, and it's something you can apply fairly easily to designs that you do or things that you have to lay out. So that takes that Fibonacci square and uses it pretty literally, but you can also use it just to lay out columns. And I know that in web design stuff I'm laying out columns all the time, but I think everybody has to now and then. So it makes a very pleasing proportion to use that same golden ratio. So to get that B that you need to decide what the width of your columns are going to be, you just need that number at the bottom, the 0.61803, and just multiply your total by that, and that will give you the small one. And you can look online, and there's other ways to do it. One of the other things you can use ratios for is to help your photography. If you like to work on composing things, if you take stuff out of the center so that you aren't centering your images, you can try to center it on the golden mean, but that's kind of hard to figure out in your head. So the photographers that I know cheat and do a third. And so if you take your photos and instead of centering your subject matter, you scooch them over to the side, and you're using something called the rule of thirds. And it's a time-tested, time-honored ratio to use in photography. But you take the most important part of your picture and put it off to the side on that 1/3 part. And what it does for you is it allows the viewer's eye to move through the picture better. It adds some drama. It adds a little bit of energy to the photo, or painting, or whatever you're doing, really. So this photo is a photo by John Baird, a local guy, and he has put that playground toy right there on the 1/3 mark. And what it does, especially in this case, is not just to give you that off-balance look, but it also then lets you go on the spokes of that toy back into the rest of the picture. And he's done another thing here, which is kind of supersized the ratio thing, and he's also done it horizontally. So not only is it 1/3 over here, it's 1/3 up. And so this is like a really powerful spot in a photo, and you can do it in the other corner or the other corner. Any of those 4 spots where the thirds cross works out pretty well. So it's just a really easy thing to do instead of centering. And once you've mastered golden ratios and the thirds, then you have to start breaking the rules, but that's an entirely different talk. So.